Yeah, there's a couple of things about a buy box that I've only come to appreciate after the fact as I've tried to help people move forward. And the first one is a buy box is permission to focus. It actually demands it.
Mm.
And equally, it demands you to ignore everything else. So here are the keys to a buy box. And this is for new investors, right? I think new investors are the ones that get distracted or all over the map and they're not learning the skill. My core belief for having a buy box is real estate investing is a skill. And because it's a skill, it must be practiced. And it must be practiced. It must be practiced. And by the time you've learned the skill, you could take that skill anywhere in the country. So here was my buy box that I shared on Graham's Iced Coffee Hour. And I share all the time, right? It was 93703. And let's set this up. We have time. So I live in the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley. Very expensive, no cash flow. I wasted a year looking for cash flow here. Doesn't exist. So I ultimately found Fresno, California, which is 2.5 hours away. Never lived there. Didn't know anybody. No roots, no nothing. It might as well have been Alaska as far as I was concerned. I knew nothing. So we went to Fresno and we started asking around and networking, like, where do people have rentals? Where do people have rentals? And when we had those conversations, there was a part of town called the Mayfair District, aka 93703, where it seemed like middle America. And I'm like, great, I'm going to look there. Means I'm going to ignore everything else. Second, I had to figure out what I'm going to look at. Is it multifamily? Is it condos? Is it townhomes? Is it mobile homes? Is it single family homes? Is it fourplexes? What am I going to look at? Again, this is 2002. I knew nothing. So I said, hey, I live in a house. Let's look at a house. Okay. Back then that would probably produce, a couple hundred listings. Again, remember, I'm a full-time employee. I'm traveling the world. I'm raising a daughter. I've got family responsibilities. I don't have time to look at the entire active listings. So I have to put a filter on 93703 that allows me to produce somewhere between 20 and 40 active listings. Why? Because that's how much I can get through in about 15 minutes. So my initial buy box was a 3 or 4 bedroom, 2 bath, 2-car garage, single story, I think between 1,200 and 2,000 square feet. So that routinely produced a list of 25 to 30 active listings. I looked at that list every day to try to figure out what an average deal was. And ultimately, because I looked at it routinely and ignored everything else, I was able to find great deals because that's all I looked at. That's what most investors get wrong, right? Most investors be like, okay, great. I looked at 93703, but what about 704 and 728 and 705? You can't learn doing that. It's you just fill your head with too many data points and you don't get any compounding. So my superpower of being laser focused and willing to look. I mean, I looked at that one buy box for 3 freaking years. There's 1 million people in Fresno, and I looked at 1/10 of 1%. But that's why I was really, really good. I could find the deal faster than anybody else. I knew that buy box better than any other human on the planet. And it allowed me to get great deals for 3 years before I expanded my buy box.
And from a management perspective, was it a huge advantage in that regard as well?
Well, when you say management, you mean operational management?
Mm-hmm.
I had a property manager since day one.
Okay.
Right. We outsourced that. So I'm sure it was better for them because they could see all of them within a couple of blocks. But as far as Olivia and I, it didn't impact us at all.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I think I probably subconsciously took some of those lessons away as I was building my portfolio, which is more affordable short-term rental units, but same thought process. Like I just put blinders on and got super clear on one market, and it allowed me to find deals quicker, know the rules in that area, know the inspectors in that area. I do self-manage, so I've got all the same cleaners and handyman and all that. The economies of scale just it led to financial freedom so much quicker than had I tried to buy one in each market that I was interested in. So
love it. I mean, it's a cheat code.
Yeah.
Because again, anybody could do a bad deal. Anybody could do an average deal. But when you get laser focused and you look every day, you're going to start to see ways to create value. You're going to see ways that other people miss. You're going to find that listing with the horrible pictures that's been on and off the market 3 different times, and you're going to write a disrespectful offer, and the seller's going to be, okay, I'll take it because it's the only one that's going to go. It's an unfair advantage that most new investors poo-poo because they just insist on, I got to do more. No, you don't. You got to be laser focused on a buy box.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen a lot of YouTube influencers recently kind of debate the whole cash flow versus equity standpoint. And I don't know if it's stemming right now from the fact that interest rates are higher, price points are higher, so it's harder to get cash flow. So, maybe justifying buying for equity more. What's your take on this? I certainly have my opinion, but I'd love to hear your.
So I've been doing this a long enough. I mean, I started before the GFC, and I have seen people play the appreciation game. In fact, I live in a market that's the appreciation game because cash flow doesn't exist. It feels really, really good until it doesn't. And then you go bankrupt. So anybody preaching appreciation, bet on appreciation, screw cash flow, negative cash flow, who cares? You got a great job, yada, yada, yada. I wrote about it in my first book. I walked into an executive's office one time, and he was all gung-ho about New Orleans, right? After Katrina, yes, I'm that old, the federal government or state government, I forget who did it, but they basically created some incentives to build new homes in and around New Orleans. And it had these tax advantages and, this, that, and the other. And this executive basically said, hey, Michael, I see what you and Olivia are doing. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it different. I'm going to go to New Orleans. And he showed me his whiteboard, and it had at the end of the whiteboard, it had a negative $1,000. So of course I jumped to the bottom line and going, so each of these 4 houses you're buying is going to cost you $250 a month. That's what, before property management, before repairs, before this, before, you're losing $250 a month on purpose. He's like, yeah. I'm like, you think that's a good idea? He goes, Michael, you don't know. I make all this money. I can afford to lose $1,000. Look at all this appreciation that's coming, blah, blah, blah. Lost his ass, lost all 4, had him foreclosed. Don't do it. Now, if you want to step back and say, how did it work for you, Michael? Yeah, there's no question. When you're 25 years in this, most of your wealth is because of appreciation. But cash flow is like the blood or the oxygen that keeps the portfolio alive. And if the portfolio is not alive, it doesn't matter. Right. So I don't play that game. I would never bet on appreciation. I would never tell people to bet on appreciation. It's cash flow, or don't do the deal. Because I saw a guy worth $10 million who was flipping for appreciation in the last cycle, lose it all, go bankrupt, lose his net worth, loses his wife left him. He's out of the game, and he's probably an alcoholic. I mean, don't do it. It's not even a question. Anybody preaching appreciation doesn't know the pain that comes from being wrong.
Mm. Yeah. And I have personally never met a person who is able to quit their job because of the appreciation or feels comfortable with it. Like even people who have a huge net worth, if they don't have the income coming in, like, for you as an example, like, you're being paid several $100,000 in your job. If you just had the net worth, which you probably had a significant net worth at the time, but you said had way more than that coming in cash flow, I'm assuming you probably wouldn't have felt comfortable walking into your boss's office.
No, I mean, I would have had to get a job. I mean, because if you just have appreciation and net worth, and you're going to live off that, it's like going up to a fruit tree, like an orange tree that's in full bloom. And every couple of years, you got to cut off a branch. Eventually that thing's going to be a stick.
Yeah.
Right. That's just not the way to do it. Appreciation is great. Appreciation is awesome. If you do this game long enough, most of your wealth will be appreciation. It's not lost on me, but you need the oxygen. You need the cash flow to keep this thing alive. Else it can't grow. Right.
Absolutely. So for my listeners who don't know, so Michael has a daily YouTube show that's under. It's sort of a sub channel, I guess, underneath your
Mm-hmm.
main living off or
Mm-hmm.
your one rental at a time channel.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's called daily. It's daily financial
Daily
news, right?
financial news. Yep.
Okay. So you've kind of become a market expert, a financial market expert by doing this. I mean, you're in it every day. And,
Mm-hmm. Every day.
um, I think my focus, I tend not to be in the daily news that much. And I've had sort of this 5 to 10 year
Mm-hmm.
aperture. I'm curious on your perspective, having to be in the financial news every day, having to teach it also, which makes you understand it at even a deeper level. Um, what's your perspective? I'm curious, like what's been the biggest takeaway or lesson learned since starting this daily show
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to your investing philosophy?
So there's a lot there. So one of the things that's really great about the Daily Financial Show is it's actually something I've been doing for 30 years.
Oh, really?
So,
Wow. I didn't
so
realize that.
no, well, the habit. So
Okay.
I have been waking up. I wake up without an alarm clock somewhere between 5:30 and 6 a.m. every day. My wife is a night owl. So typically what that means is I get up, I take care of the dogs in the morning, and then I get about an hour to read and drink my coffee and, do all of that. And so I've been doing that for the better part of 30 years. After I retired and I started doing this YouTube game, about a year or so into that game, birthed the daily financial news because I was already doing it. So like I did it this morning, right? And I just have 2 pages of notes and, I just run through what I read. So again, I've been doing this daily activity for 30 years. I've been talking to a camera for 5 years. So what have I learned? I think there's a couple of things that I take as takeaways. First and foremost, a lot of folks get wrapped in emotional decisions, right? And in the finance world, emotion is not something to leverage, right? It typically when emotion is involved, you make bad decisions. So that's the first thing. Second, our economy is driven by consumers. So I have an econ degree, went back to school and got an MBA. I have been studying the consumer specifically for 30 years. And the consumer is predictable, right? We do the same things in different eras. What do I mean? Well, let me give you an example. Let's talk about the GFC, and then let's talk about what's happening to commercial real estate today. The global financial crisis was caused by a series of events, and then we paid the price. What were those events? Well, we went from an environment where real estate was funded with 30-year or 15-year fixed rate debt to an environment in 2006 where 51% of loans were ARMs.
Mm.
So we did something different. People were betting on appreciation, to your point earlier. I don't care that the interest rate goes from 2% to 10%. I'll refi or sell. I mean, that was an attitude. And if you look at the loan originations, the numbers show short-term adjustable rate, some teaser loans. I think 12% of loans were these, neg am loans, which are now illegal, but were very common then. Next, what you saw is you saw the masses. You saw some people make quick money, and then the masses just kept coming. And people were saying, real estate never goes down. Real estate never goes down. Like it was just this belief that real estate would go to the heavens. And ultimately what happened is the short-term debt started to reset. And we realized that not everybody was in a position to pay the higher mortgage, and thus started the snowball of foreclosures and short sales. So what happened here recently? Well, we are suffering the same stupidity in a different asset class. In the commercial real estate market, and again, I've been doing this for years and I've called it and it's now happening. So, nailed it. We saw in 21, 22, and 23, again, short-term, AKA bridge debt, variable rate, bad assumptions, and we saw the masses come in. So in my, real numbers, in my market, a cap rate for a C-class building usually is like an 8 cap. I sold a building at a 5.5 cap.
Wow.
It went down to a 4.5 cap. It should have never been there. But what happened? The masses kept throwing money at it. Syndications were taking foolish money and making bad deals. It's the same thing. Short-term debt, variable rate debt, the masses came running in. So what did I do? I got out of the way. I sold some of my bad assets for stupid prices and waited on the sidelines. And, we're going to pick up the pieces. So if you can study the consumer, you can figure it out. And then the last thing I've learned, which really pisses people off, is inflation is a feature, not a bug. Now, I'm not talking 9.1 inflation is a feature. I'm talking 2%, 2.5%. If you understand that inflation is a feature, not a bug, you invest different. You go buy assets that are indexed with inflation. You go get fixed rate debt. So your cost of capital doesn't change. And you just let in 30 years of inflation make those payoffs lower and lower and lower. So there's a lot of things you could take away by being in the masses every day.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And with the commercial, to your point around commercial, what do you think is going to happen as a result of? I mean, you said it's kind of falling apart. Where do you think that it all shakes out?
Well, so when you think about commercial real estate, there's Class A, Class B, and Class C. Class A stuff, again, big stuff rich guys play with, is already trading at a 30% discount. Ken McElroy, Grant Cardone, these big players, they're already gobbling up deals at 30% off. So that stuff's already retrading. What isn't retrading, what is still broken because we don't have price discovery, is Class B and Class C.
Mm.
I believe if Class A is trading at a 30% discount, Class B should be 40 and Class C might be 50.
Wow.
So that's coming. The question is when? I think it's mid 2025, maybe 2026. So you can only extend and pretend so long. You can only hold these operators so long. And again, I say this as somebody who's been in this before. Part of the GFC was commercial real estate, right? Single family homes get the noise because they collapse the most. But, we bought apartment buildings for 50% off last time. There was an apartment building we still own today that was listed for 1.44. We bought for $700,000.
Wow.
It's going to happen again. It just takes time for the pain to be recognized and prices to reset. So it's coming.